I wanted to wear a suit and tie to work every day. I wanted to have a white-collar job. I wanted to work in corporate America. And I got all those things, man, and I got them in spades, but it didn't bring me happiness.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of, what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, so this is going to be a fun episode. I'm bringing you Julian Placino and his story. And now this guy is the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. He's done a lot of things. He's accomplished a lot of things. And this one is really a fun episode for me because there's really kind of a deep dive. You'll even hear in a section where I took notes on some of the things that were coming out of Julian as we just talked back and forth about philosophies, kind of life, and how our worlds are really running kind of this a parallel path. It was a great, great conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy this one.
All right, guys, going to be a very, very cool episode. I'm bringing my buddy on, Julian. And, I was on his show probably around the December or so time frame last year. And we just had such a blast that I had to get him on my show. And I love the fact that he's kicking so much ass in life right now that we're actually recording this on a Saturday outside of my normal recording schedule so I can get him in here so you guys get to hear his story. So I'm really looking forward to this one. So, Julian, brother, welcome to the show, my friend. Tell us your story, man. Who the heck are you?
Yeah, well, Donnie, first off, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. My name is Julian Placino. I'm a senior recruiting and staffing professional, the creator of the Pathways to Success podcast, and recently the founder of the Pathways to Success training and development company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when I was on your show, I know I was like episode 97, 98. How many are you up to now?
117.
That is so awesome. We were just talking about right before we get on here how cool it is to hear the stories of everybody and, the networking that comes from running your own podcast. What has been your experience, running your show and talking to all these people? What are some of the big highlights and takeaways?
So I think becoming a content creator has literally changed my life. This was, as I mentioned with you when we met, truly a passion project. But having created consistent content over the past 2.5 years, I sort of inadvertently became like an expert in terms of personal branding. Honestly, not until episode 100 did I figure out what was happening, because when you create content, it becomes like this social footprint for people to get to know you without them ever meeting you. What that does is it allows you to create kind of trust, credibility, and authority with people that you're looking to serve. So that's probably the biggest thing, was that this idea of a personal brand kind of emerged as a result of pursuing this passion project through the podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, because I feel the same way with mine. Although I haven't turned it into a business or anything from that aspect as far as my personal brand's coming out of it. But you're absolutely right about once you start putting content out there, people start coming to it like moths to the flames of horrible analogy, but if they feel that connection and vibe with you, your brand continues to evolve and build. And it's just a really, really cool experience. And I think because of your podcast, you started evolving your businesses and what you were doing and started growing as a person. True?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've taken away, something from every guest that I've had, and having a podcast, it sort of gives you a reason to reach out and get to know amazing people. And it's been one of the most effective networking tools I've ever seen.
And I'm sure you've had the experience. So I was out in Dallas this past week. I went to this event, and there's a line of people walking to get in this event, and we're all signing in, right? And they're asking everybody as they sign in, what do you do? Well, from years past, I always said, I was a sales trainer, and you'd almost get the eye roll, right? Because you're like, crap, here's one of those coaches, consultants, whatever. But when I got up there and I said, I'm a podcaster, you would have thought I was Santa Claus. They were like, really? Tell me more. I'm sure you've experienced somewhat similar thing when you've introduced yourself that way.
Yeah, there's definitely kind of a halo effect, and especially when you start associating yourself with platforms like iTunes, like Spotify, like iHeartRadio, it kind of creates sort of a legitimacy to the work that you're bringing into the world. So, yeah, no, absolutely. There's definitely a coolness factor to being a podcaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've evolved. When you and I met, you were heavily focused on just being a staffing executive, helping companies place people and the like. You've now evolved that into a training development company. Walk us through that journey of what it was like starting your own business, learning the ups and downs, and your vision from what you thought it was going to be to what you actually created.
Yeah, so all of this really kind of stemmed from the podcast and, sort of like a mosaic, right? Like when you're that close to that work of art, you can't see things. But when you start to zoom out, a picture starts to form. Well, I was trying to make sense, like around episode 100 of what is this body of work? What exactly am I creating here? And then I started to see sort of themes that came from these guests that I've had on the podcast, specifically around, leadership, sales, career development, and also wellness. It was a professional development podcast, which is essentially what it was. was, right? So then I was thinking, what if I created corporate training solutions around these pillars and leveraging the knowledge, resources, and experiences of the guests I've had on the podcast? Because, for me, whenever I try to learn something from people, I look for people who have done things before. And that's exactly what this network was that I built. So I thought, why not take these individuals, successful entrepreneurs and best-selling authors and elite athletes and bring them together to create corporate training solutions? And that was kind of the initial idea behind the training company. Since then, I've learned so many different things, right? I landed 2 very big meetings with 2 Fortune 500 companies. I pitched the idea. They both said this is great, this is innovative, but no one wrote a check, right? So I went back to the drawing board. I talked to my mentors, and one of them in particular said, Julian, this is a great thing that you're doing, but you need to focus. You need to focus on one vertical, and you need to do the training, because right now you don't have credibility in building a training company. So then I took inventory as far as who I was, and I've been in recruiting and staffing for the past 11 years. That's my base. That's my expertise of domain, and quite frankly, that's where a lot of my network actually is. So then I had this idea of, what if I put together kind of best practices of recruiting and also sales and go out to pitch to specific staffing companies given these unique insights that I have? Well, 2 companies instantly bought. The original was a 45-minute lunch and learn training that's now expanded into 2 6-month retained training engagements. I'm also now in the process of putting together a full SOW for a year-long training and development program for one of my clients. So it is rapidly evolving. I've seen great acceptance from ideas into the marketplace.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And, it's such the entrepreneur journey, at least based on my experience. When I jumped out on my own to start my own business, what I'm doing now is definitely not what I had originally planned to do. I mean, I thought I was going to be the next Tony Robbins. That was my thing. And as I've evolved, I've really found that I have a true passion for podcasting. I love getting in conversations with people, and it's amazing how focusing in for me on the podcast has allowed me to grow my ancillary businesses with the different things that I've brought on board, from coaching clients to content development clients, and it's allowed me to scale. And I think part of that is that ability to be extremely flexible. What was it like when you walked away from those Fortune 5s going, holy crap, what have I done? I mean, did you have that thought process because it didn't win the way you thought it was going to be?
I did, and especially because I was coming from a genuine place where I thought I was going to create a unique piece of value. But for me, just getting a meeting with stakeholders from Fortune 500 companies, never having built a company before, was great. Also, I feel like I developed a good relationship, and quite frankly, they were giving me market feedback, and that's like the ultimate test of a product. You hear of this idea in technology about a minimal viable product. Well, they helped me shape that. They actually gave me specific ideas in terms of the ideal set of classroom, how long training needs to be. They gave me a lot of feedback on how I needed to shape it, which helped me actually create the current iteration of the product today. So yeah, it was a little disappointing, but at the same time, I think those roadblocks are there meant to sort of teach you things, and also in some cases push you in just a different direction that's going to help you succeed. And that's the way that I see it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. But I'm curious, the day you got the no's, right? The day that they said, hey, this isn't going to be a fit, how long did it take you to bounce?
So immediately after I got those 2 rejections, I reached out to my mentor, and I had a conversation with him about a week after. I bounced right after I had that meeting.
Right on. So, and I just want people to hear that is as we're going through it and we're stacked up against it, we're going to have the highs and lows. And Rocky Balboa says it's best. It's not how hard you can take a hit. It's taking a hit and keep moving forward. And I think that shows hellacious tenacity on your part to chalk that up as a beautiful learning experience and plow forward with it. Have you always had that knack of learning from experiences, or is that a learned skill?
I think I've always had this thing inside of me that was seeking expression in the terms of personal development. I always did have this kind of natural curiosity. And for me, although I love, reading books, I love, watching YouTube videos, I always love best kind of engaging with individuals one-on-one. And that's kind of where this iteration from the podcast came from. Yes, it was a passion project, but it's been the best kind of personal development tool I've ever had as well. So yeah, I think it's something that I kind of always had, but learned to cultivate once I learned what I wanted to build. You know what I mean? It's like once I had that focus, I channeled all of my energies towards learning about that one thing.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I love that you learn to get completely laser focused in on one target, because a lot of companies struggle with that. I mean, even with when I was doing sales training, you talk to companies, you're like, okay, who's your target? What are you focused on? And they're like, I can help everybody. And as soon as you hear somebody say that they can help everybody, you know their business is struggling. It's because they're just all over the place, all over the map, trying to sell to anybody with a heartbeat. It's pretty amazing once people get focused in how fast and how far they can go because of not only do you get the laser-focused targets, but other people start taking notice because your message seems to get more clear, more relevant, and more spot on for what people are looking for. As you continue to grow with this, what are some of the things you've learned along the way as you've built this training practice? I mean, I'm sure it's not been all sunshine and rainbows. What are some of those cool learning experiences you've had so far?
I think the most important lesson I've learned, and it's something that I've heard about many times, but it takes a different meaning once you experience it for yourself, is who is your customer? And as I interview other people who are trying to start their own thing, that's one of the most difficult things for people to sort of crystallize, right? Like with the first iteration of my training company, I really was trying to serve everyone. I was actually trying to be really broad. But you know, something I learned in the world of professional recruitment and staffing is this. The market doesn't seek generalization. It seeks specialization. I was just now learning this in my own entrepreneurial quest, right? So the clearer I got on who my customer was, the better I could develop a product to serve them. So that's number one. And number two is this idea of taking those no's and taking what the market is telling you and to iterate off of that. Like the market was literally telling me on how I needed to craft and also change this into something that was actually worthwhile, right? And one part of my story also is that as a content creator, I actually started posting these helpful videos on LinkedIn, just these free videos about, recruiting and also staffing. I've been posting since February, and my content has generated over 250,000 views. And I'm building this very specific following of recruiting and staffing professionals. And what's interesting coming from that, like my LinkedIn profile has never been the same. I'm getting coaching requests, speaking requests, consulting engagement requests, and the market is literally telling me their pain points about what I need to craft training for. So it's been absolutely crazy.
So this is cool. I don't know if you're the same way, but a lot of times when I'm recording, these podcasts, I'm constantly taking notes. I get so much value out of the guests, so I'm always writing things down because I want to remember some of the things they said. And here's some of the cool things that I just wrote down out of what came out of your mouth, and these are great, is the market doesn't want generalization. They want specialization. Dude, that's huge. I mean, that is telling people that they have to get laser focused. The second that I love is listening to the crowd. There's a lot of people that I've heard it my entire career that your audience is going to tell you what they need. You've just got to provide a platform where they can speak up. And then the third is the free content, which is one of the seen as controversial. Even yesterday, as I was doing some Facebook Lives, my mom, after I did the Facebook Live, called me and she goes, "What do you get out of giving away all this free knowledge?" And I said, well, it's not about getting anything out of giving free knowledge. It's about sharing a message and hopes that people will resonate it with it. Maybe they'll have some breakthroughs. And I said, Mom, you'll be amazed how many people will reach out to me after doing something where you're giving away free value. So I'm curious for you, was the the LinkedIn videos and all that, was that your brainchild just trying to give back, or did someone coach you into doing that?
That was really my brainchild. And the thing is, I've been a content creator. I launched the podcast, right, March of 2016. But I only started using my content creation ability once I had clarity on the kind of business that I wanted to build. And that's when I started posting these very specific recruiting and staffing videos on LinkedIn, right? So that was something that became laser focused once I gained clarity on what it was that I was trying to create.
Dude, that's so awesome. Because a lot of people are worried that if they give away, I had a guy tell me if I give away the secret sauce, then I have nothing to sell. And I tried to tell him that, dude, it's because you gave away the secret sauce that you have everything to sell. But he wasn't buying it. So it was a fun conversation.
There's actually a few things I wanted to add right there real quick, Donnie, if I could. So Jim Rohn is one of, for me, man, one of the best ever, right?
Agreed.
One of the things that he said that has stayed with me forever, he said, giving starts the receiving process. And I feel that way when it comes to content, right? So another thing, well, first off, like whenever you give, like without the expectation of getting anything in return, right? That seems to be a real thing. Ralph Waldo Emerson, he calls that one of life's most beautiful compensations. He says that it's impossible to sincerely try to help your fellow man without indirectly helping yourself. But it's getting to that mind space where you're honestly trying to give something to someone without expecting anything in return. But when you get there, there really seems to be kind of a law that kind of governs that. Also, whenever I give my content away for free, yes, I'm sharing best practices, but it also forces me to create more. That's been one of the biggest things I've gained from being a content creator is in sticking to a schedule is forcing me to create. It's like a muscle, right? Yeah. So for 2 years, I launched one new podcast episode every Monday, right? I've had to switch to every other Monday now because my training company is taking precedent. But that's a real thing. That's a real muscle. Creativity is something that you can grow and cultivate.
Yeah, no, you're so spot on because when I was doing a lot of workshops and trainings, you can't deliver the same training 100 times without going bonkers, especially to the same client. So when you get put into that spot to where you got to create content and develop, it's amazing how your mind can go, I'm not sure what to talk about on this subject, to watch me whip this whole workshop out or this whole podcast out all the way through. So I had never thought about it in that regards about how much it helps you because you're going through the process of creating that content. But I think a lot of people struggle with coming up with content. I mean, Gary Vee is, you either love him or hate him, has a huge thing out there that, you're good on content is if you can come up with 50 different ideas on it. And I know the first time he said that to me, I'm like, well, I'm sure I could, but man, 50 different ideas is a lot of things. What would you say to someone who's trying to come up with all this different content? Because, content for me is queen as far as social media goes because engagement is king. So how do you come up with so much content?
So I think the first thing that helped me first was really to set an intention, like in the description of my iTunes podcast, right? I said, this is a weekly show. This is a weekly show. That's out there. I committed to it, right? So sticking to a schedule that's sustainable for you, I think is key, right? And if you commit yourself to that, and I don't know what the governing principle about this or whatever is, but whenever I focus on one thing, I start to like subconsciously come up with ideas when I wake up in the morning, when I'm taking a shower, or when I'm going for a run. And something that Gary Vee also says is that he said, don't focus on creating, focus on documenting. So whenever I'm hit with some type of inspiration, I immediately write that down and I immediately write a piece of content for that, right? And what starts to happen for me is a backlog starts to come from that, right? And that fills my content calendar.
Yeah. So, Julian, are you like me? Do you have notepads everywhere? I mean, I've got one by my nightstand. I keep one in my backpack that I carry everywhere. There's one in the kitchen. I'm notorious for getting that 3 o'clock wake up in the morning going, oh, I've got to write that down. Do you do kind of the same thing?
I do. I have 3 major methods. Trello is my project management tool. I capture ideas there. Evernote, and also Notes on my iPhone.
Nice. Yeah, I use the Notes app as well. I haven't played around with Trello a whole lot, so that's interesting. So, where is all this adventure taking you? Because I really see you on some bigger stage and platforms. Is public speaking in your future?
I think so. And, it's a really weird thing is because, it really is, Donnie, believe it or not, despite what you've seen from me, it's still one of my biggest fears and anxiety. And I cannot say this about many things else that I can do, but it's one of the best things that I can do. It's like this weird thing for me. Like within my greatest fear lies one of my greatest strengths, right? Public speaking is something that I'm definitely passionate about. I feel very equipped for, and I can see because the market is validating my ideas by engagement and also while accepting my training company. So yeah, speaking is definitely something I have become passionate about. And the more and more I do it, the more and more I put videos out, the more and more I get like invitations. Like I have like maybe 7 or 8 speaking invitations before the end of this year for like various conferences. And it's been really amazing and I'm super humbled by it.
Yeah, so I really want people to hear that because if they were to meet you face to face, you come across as a very confident, well put together, laser focused guy. So, me hearing on the back end, I'm like, how the heck is public speaking a fear of his? And I think people really, really struggle with that thought process because they see people on stage, they see people on videos and everything else, and they go, man, that person is just awesome and loves to do that. How do you handle that fear and still walk out on stages? Or how do you handle that jitterness and all that and still, for me, it's perform. How do you perform?
You know, for me, it was not easy in the beginning. If there's one thing that I do have as kind of a natural advantage is I don't look nervous when I am nervous to strangers. But people who know me can kind of tell that I have nerves, right? But the truth of the matter is I just got my reps in, man. Like, no matter how scared I was of it, I just did it again and again and again. Something also that I do for every presentation, it's like for like a 30-minute speech, man, I probably put in like 6 or 7 hours of practice. And for me, that practice is key. And when I practice, it's not in my head. I get up, I stand on my kitchen table, I pretend I'm presenting at Carnegie Hall. I intentionally try to like kind of freak myself out, right? But when I practice, it's full body, it's kinetic. You know what I mean?
Right.
By the time that I do it, like I've done it 100 times before, literally. But there is one thing I learned from John Maxwell, though, because sometimes I have a tendency to get like so much anxiety and practice too much. Like the day before, I don't even look at it. You know what I mean? I don't even look at it, and especially minutes before, I try not to think about what I'm going to say. And to me, it makes it kind of new again in the moment. And when I do speak it, it becomes much more organic. So I work really hard, let it incubate for 24 hours before, and then I perform.
No, I love that. The funny thing about that is I don't think a lot of people who don't do public speaking know that one of the things we do is act the part in our own houses. I mean, my dogs look at me all the time like I got two heads. Because if I'm going up for a big speech, same thing as you, except I'm a pacer on stage, right? So I take the entire body of the stage when I speak. So I'm doing that across my house, and my dogs, you know, they're doing that head tilt thing as I'm projecting my voice, you know, and everything going through. But it's the same thing. It's that muscle memory of rehearsing and practicing the speech. I hadn't thought about not doing it right, you know, the day before or right before you go on. For me, I'm more of a Q&A style speaker. That's just always been my style and approach versus a keynote. So that's interesting. Do you really think that not practicing right before helps you get out of your head right before it happens?
I think it does, and I actually do try to sort of meditate before. I got that from Tom Bilyeu, and that seems to work, you know, because I feel like I've done all the preparation already, and I don't need – whenever I show up to a speech, I've prepared. I've done the work. There's nothing I'm going to be able to do in the next 10 minutes to make me better, right? And if anything, that's sort of like refresh period right before when I don't even think about it. It does allow me to perform at a greater height when it's showtime. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. And David Sandler, who was the founder of the Sandler training program, which I used to do, had a great saying. He was at a golf course, and he was getting ready to play a pro-am. And he walks up there, and he's got a bucket of balls, and he's hitting it next to the pro he's supposed to play with. And the pro walks up, drops 4 balls, and hits them. And David Sandler looked at the pro and said, "Aren't you going to hit more balls?" The pro looked right back at him and said, "If you didn't have it before you got here, you're not going to find it here." And that's always been that thing that stuck with me is if I'm going to go deliver a workshop, a speech, anything else, it's the practice before you get there that gets you ready for game day. You know, and I've always loved that thought process and approach to everything. Here's something that I want people to really key in out of this conversations. I think they should go back and count how many different names we've dropped, not because we're friends with them, but because we've gotten value from their content, and go see how many different authors, speakers, you know, everything else that we deliver. You've dropped quite a few names just of people that you've picking up kind of that mentorship from by reading their stuff. How often are you consuming other people's content to learn something?
You know, this is just kind of who I've been since I was 18 years old and discovered Tony Robbins. Like, there were these people out there who could, with good ideas, could give you something that if you acted upon, could help you create a specific result. And I found out it wasn't just Anthony Robbins. It was Brian Tracy. It was Zig Ziglar. It was, Tom Bilyeu. It was Lewis Howes. It was Tim Ferriss. It was John Maxwell. It was all these people who've done things I've already wanted to do. And for me, I wanted to learn about how they thought, but more importantly, what they did. And I just started doing all that stuff and applying it uniquely the way that kind of comes out of me. And that seems to have served me very well.
Yeah, no, same. I love telling everybody that my father handed me the book Think and Grow Rich when I was 14 years old, but I didn't read it till I was 22 because, I was a punk kid. And, once I got into that book, it opened me, just like you, to the same world of there is people out there that have already done, already accomplished, and they're teaching the steps and the process along the way. I've got a osmosis learning thing. If I hear it, I can put it in play quite rapidly. And that works really, really well in my favor. It's a huge hindrance. So I have to be careful on what I consume because I'll hear it and then I want to put it in play. And sometimes that particular move isn't to the benefit of my company. Have you ever experienced that where you're like, oh, that is the greatest thing ever. I need to do that, only to do it and realize maybe that wasn't the best call to action?
Yes, and for me, I'll throw another name, right? Marie Forleo, she says, clarity, it doesn't come from thought alone. It comes from action. It comes from engagement. Something I can tell you for sure, Donnie, I know I'm not the smartest guy out there, but man, I always took action. For me, there's no better teacher than just doing things, especially when things aren't perfect. And I think that's what kind of hinders a lot of people. They wait for all the circumstances to be right and everything to be perfect, and then you'll do something. Me, it's like as soon as I have that inspiration, as soon as I know what and why I want to do something, I take action immediately, right? And yes, I'll learn that some things don't work this way or some things should be applied in a different way, right? But the only way that I gain clarity is by doing them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always use the philosophy that you got to get punched in the face. And the only way you're going to get punched and I don't mean, physically. I mean, you got to go out and screw something up so you can actually learn something. So you can chalk up there right along with everything you're saying is, that fear of failure holds people back versus, plus they think it's got to be perfect before they move. When you don't get out there and get slung around by life, you will stay in a mundane life, or as somebody taught me is you'll plateau out in life. And I love the other thing that you said about taking action. I think inaction is definitely the downfall for most people. Once again, is that a natural skill for you to take action, or is that also learned?
No, I definitely think I'd lean towards paralysis through analysis. I have a very hyper-analytical approach. I've known to be very pragmatic, right? But I knew being that way prevented me from growing. So that was definitely something that was a discipline I had to impose on myself, was to take action immediately, even with imperfect information, even without a fully fleshed out game plan, because it has a way of kind of unfolding as you do things. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the process of going through it that teaches you how to learn teaches you to learn how to do it. I can't talk right now. Geez. But you're spot on. Being the analytical mindset, learning that discipline couldn't have been easy. How do you force yourself to do it?
I think once you start to gain clarity on why you want to make a change, that really moves you into action. But I think a lot of times people don't do the hard work of sort of self-awareness and thinking about what is it that they truly want out of life, right?
Absolutely.
For me, that's the first step, is understanding okay, this is cool, but why do I want to do this? Getting clear on that, to me, is always the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. But the same thing is people struggle with vision. They struggle on not only what they want to do, but where they want to go. You ask a lot of people and you say, okay, what's your milestones in life? Where do you want to get to? And they're like, oh, I want to be a millionaire. And I'm like, why? And they struggle and they come up with words like freedom or they want to go travel, or it comes back to they haven't spent enough time focused and working on them. Do you spend your days, journaling, staying inside your head, figuring Julian out, or how do you find your own personal clarity?
It's kind of a mixture of both. You know, for every personality test that I've had, I lean towards extroversion, right? It's like I gain energy being around people and serving people, right? But I need both. I need to rest and recharge. And honestly, I don't know if you probably have experienced this, but the more public facing work that I do, like the more I'm up in front of audiences, the more I find myself needing to kind of be alone and to recharge, right? So it really is kind of a mix of both. I've stopped the habit of journaling necessarily because I feel like I already gained that clarity, but going through that process of thinking, like, who are you? What do you want? What are your gifts? What are your weaknesses? How can you uniquely create value for others? Like, that's part thinking, and the other part really is acting upon it, because you don't really get that clarity until you do it. And once you do it, you get it. It's in your bones. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm curious why you walked away from journaling. Was it because you thought you got all of that out of it, or it wasn't bringing you any value anymore?
You know, it was definitely something. I really think it's a practice I need to start doing again, right? But because I now understand the focus of what I'm doing, and that's building this company, like, all of my extra energy is going into content creation of how I can help this one particular company grow their business, right? So that's where all of my creative energies go to. And again, it's like having that focus. Once I've latched onto something, all of my conscious and subconscious efforts go towards that. And really, journaling was a tool for me to sort of find myself and gain that clarity. But man, I can honestly say this. I was lost for a very big part of my life, but now I know what I'm doing. And now I know what the activities and disciplines I need to impose on myself to bring it into fruition. And I think that's why it's taken a priority, because I'm now in building mode.
Yeah. One thing that I would suggest, because it still continues to be a game changer for me, is instead of journaling for mindset and understanding who you are, start journaling about your business and some of the places you want to take it. Mm-hmm. So what I found for me is I do my Jackass journal that I have, but I also do the 3 pages every morning. And I sit down and just write 3 pages on anything that pops in my head. And because I'm so focused on business right now, what I'm finding for me, and I hope you find the same value, is when I'm journaling just to write, so many cool angles that I hadn't thought about my business have popped into play. And it's been a tremendous amount of value for me. So feel free to borrow that if that'll help you. So
yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So now you're running this awesome training company. Tell me a little bit about that. What are you training? What are you teaching? What are you doing with all of that?
So my customers are staffing professionals. So I help staffing companies between 25 to 50 million. So these are kind of the mid-sized staffing companies. And something I've learned about them is a lot of times they don't have onboarding protocol nor any kind of robust staffing because they just don't have time nor the manpower. But that's exactly where I come in. Contrast that to very large organizations like, Robert Half. They have a fully fleshed out training and development program, but there's such a big gap there. So I teach staffing companies how to gain new clients and recruit better candidates through client and candidate empathy, through personal branding, and non-traditional methods to close new business and recruit new candidates.
You know what? If I asked you that in December, as you were getting this all ramped up, you would not have been that clear on that message. Well done, brother. Well done.
Thanks, man.
One of the reasons I love doing this podcast is I really love hearing people's stories. And that's the truth. That's the front half of it. The second half is I love getting to know people so I can watch their journey. And it's been a blast watching you grow and kind of become the Julian Placino that we're all really, really getting attached to, and watching your career completely take off and scale. Where do you think, do you see yourself commanding master audiences and, traveling the world being that guy?
I do. In kind of, so Gary Vee he's a very public figure. He's a content creator. He's a speaker, but his business is a marketing agency.
Right.
I feel like that's the direction I'm going, but a training and development company.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because it's a huge part of my story that I was a content creator. And quite frankly, it's the thing that's given me a competitive edge and this unique conflict of experience to uniquely create value for these staffing companies, right? So I do see that. But as I continue to build this, Donnie, a bigger vision is coming to me, right? So I'm in recruiting and staffing. I'm very much on the front lines of the labor force. So at least in the industry that I'm in, almost 75% of the people in it are fresh out of school or probably late 20s, right? And feedback that I'm getting from the marketplace is a lot of these individuals sort of lack the social skills, interpersonal skills to be effective salespeople. And for me, I was kind of blind to that because, I'm kind of in my own world, but the market is actually telling me that. And if I'm taking true inventory of what's made me successful, I'm a big fan of education. I graduated from the University of North Texas, but they didn't necessarily give me the skills to succeed in the business world. So even bigger than kind of what I'm doing for these staffing companies, I see myself creating a kind of university that I take to corporations to teach people real life business skills. So that initial iteration of the training company that I was thinking of,
Yep.
It's now taking shape that this is a stepping stone to do that. And I think there's a huge opportunity for that. And honestly, I just believe it, man. I'm the guy to do that.
Dude, that is so awesome. God, I love hearing your story, especially when I was doing sales training. One of the things that I would always tell my outside sales reps is go get on stage. And the reason I would tell them that, and so many people have the fear of speaking, is when you're on stage, you get this weird validation. And I don't know if it's because you've pushed past a fear and gotten on stage, or it's because you can deliver a message, but something dynamically changes in prospects' minds or clients' minds when they see you out there. So I love the fact that you're totally embracing this. I know it really started with all the videos and that, but now you're seeing it from stages and stuff. And I truly believe, but if you continue to share your message out there, you are going to change so many lives because you can tell that you have a genuine passion and love for doing this. Does that passion come from just the 11, 12 years in this industry, or is it just something you've just kind of discovered along the way?
Man, I think it was really unleashed. Like, when you and I first met, I've been very entrepreneurial, Donnie, for like 10 years. But for strictly material reasons. I was seeking the things that you mentioned your clients were talking about, financial freedom and time freedom and going backpacking and all that kind of stuff, right? Which is cool and admirable. But I was starting business opportunities for that end in mind. I've done real estate, I've done network marketing, I've done internet businesses, I've flipped mobile homes, I've done a bunch of different things, right? And I learned a lot of lessons along the way, made some great connections, but I didn't love any of those things. And the podcast was the first time I ever allowed myself to start a kind of entrepreneurial endeavor, but intentionally didn't tie any kind of metrics of success, specifically money. I didn't even care if I got any downloads, right? But that's the thing where all this abundance came from. And it's like my whole life starts to make sense in the lens of what I'm doing today. So I was able to extract meaning from everything I've done for my personal, my professional, my entrepreneurial, life. It all started to come together. So this passion really comes from, it's like I found a way, this intersection of what I'm good at, what I love to do, and what helps other people. And that intersection is this place where I can create unique value for a very specific market that no one else can. You know what I mean? And that's where that passion came from. It's like it really is a blue ocean of opportunity for me and the way that I'm doing it.
That is so awesome. Throw one more thing in there for you. I think because you were trying so many things and dabbling in so many things that you were quickly finding out maybe things that you weren't enjoying. Things that, weren't going to become a passion that, even though podcast was kind of started just for you, which is how I started mine, it allowed you to experience something that you hadn't done before. And that's how everybody figures out what they're passionate about. Don't you agree?
I think it really is trying a bunch of different things. And, Tim Ferriss, he said something really cool that, I want to share with audiences too. He said sometimes, like when someone's tasked to find their quote unquote passion, that's a lot to take on. Like, oh my gosh, what if I get it wrong? Then I spend all this time chasing the wrong thing. He said, follow your curiosities. There's less risk associated with that. And honestly, you can't gain clarity on what you like to do until you try a bunch of different things that you don't.
Yeah, no, you're so spot on because, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a series of taking the first job that was in front of me. There was only one career, and it was the sales training one that I actively sought out and went and got. Every other job was what was in front of me. So it took me a number of years to get curious and start exploring things. And I highly encourage people, no matter where they're on their walk in this journey, is go, as in the words of Gary Vee, go taste, go try new things, go experience new things until that thing comes to the table. And I love the fact that society has changed so much that you don't work the same company for 20 years and retire and try and live off a pension. You go, you try a company out, you try something new, and if it sucks, if it's not something you like, you go try something else. And that's what's allowed you, Julian, to find your passions along the way. You've taken your licks, right? You've gotten your teeth kicked in a time or two, but it's allowed you to really blossom into who you're becoming, which is just awesome. As you continue to move forward, and you continue to change lives in the staffing and the training industry and all the individuals that are in there, what are you hoping that you accomplish in this training and everything else from two aspects? One, for the companies that you're working with. Second, for the individuals that are going through your programs.
The immediate kind of corporate thing is, yes, I want to help them increase revenue, grow existing clients, and also recruit new candidates, obviously there, right? But I really want to make a difference. I want to give people tools. The biggest fear that I have, Donnie, as a trainer, is like being a gimmick, right? Because my natural energy gets people excited, but I want to give people real tools that can help them improve their lives and help them achieve ultimately whatever their why is, And right now, the vision, the immediate vision, I'd say 1 to 3 years, is for me to get to a point where it's not just me doing this, but to build a company. I want to create a kind of an institution that can continue to create value, long after I'm done being a part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What about the individuals going through your program? What are you hoping happens for them? I mean, because your training and teaching, just from watching your videos and stuff, transcends just learning how to be a good staffing recruiter or salesperson or company. What are you hoping that the individuals get out of when you're working and training?
You know what's funny, Donnie? Earlier you said that you wanted to be like the next Tony, or you thought you were going to be like the next Tony Robbins, right?
Right.
I would be lying if I said I didn't feel that way about myself too, right? But,
I think we all kind of have that in the back. That's the only reason we do this stuff.
Yeah. But the thing is that the more and more I engage in this kind of niche, the more and more that part actually starts to come out. What I'm trying to do is help individuals create behavioral change so they can grow and achieve those breakthroughs. And you know what? I see it. Essentially, I'm trying to make a difference in their lives, because here's the thing. Recruiting and staffing, anyone who's been in it for at least maybe 2 or 3 years, it is a painful, brutal industry filled with high highs and low lows. And it will chew you up and spit you out if you are not ready for it, right? But I want to give individuals the tools to be successful, because if you do become successful in this industry, it is incredibly rewarding. And that's what I want to do, is I really want to help the people in this industry, because I am that. I came from this space. This is where all my friends are. Me and my wife met in the staffing industry. I have a deep sense of empathy for this group of individuals, and I know what their pain points are. And not only do I want to ease those pain points, but I want to give them tools to succeed. Uniquely unlike the industry has ever given them.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
You're going to absolutely crush it in this. You can just feel the passion coming off you as you speak about this, and bigger things are coming, my friend. You stay the course and keep kicking ass, because I promise you that it's going to explode for you in the very, very near future.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Donnie.
Absolutely, brother. Man, this has been one hell of a ride talking to you through this. I'm so glad we were able to catch up and really dive into this world. I'm going to give you a few seconds to just talk to my audience. I think you've got an awesome message. So let me tell you about a lot of people who listen to this show. So I get and all my listeners are called champions. And I think they're all trying to find success in some form of however they define success. So if you were going to talk to a lot of people, that are trying to go for it. Maybe they're trying to find their passion. Maybe they're, in their passion and trying to figure out how to go bigger. But they want to find something within themselves so they can just explode into the world. I'm going to give you a few seconds that you get to talk to them and tell them how you would suggest that they explode into the world.
I really think it starts with self-awareness, Donnie. You know what's so crazy is that I built a career out of helping other people find jobs, right? And really, when I graduated from college, I was trying to be sort of everything to everyone. And I was trying to pursue opportunities that portrayed the image of success. I wanted to wear a suit and tie to work every day. I wanted to have a white-collar job. I wanted to work in corporate America. And I got all those things, man, and I got them in spades, but it didn't bring me happiness. You have to do the hard work of self-awareness. You have to understand who you are. Know who you are. Know what you're good at. Know what you're bad at. Know what gives you energy. Know what takes energy away from you. Do the hard work of self-awareness. Because once you gain clarity on whoever it is that you are and what you want to do, then you can start seeking mentors. Then you can start reading books. Then you can start traveling a more direct path to where you want to go. But ultimately, that's where it starts.
Dude, thank you. That was so spot on. I mean, it's the truth. And here's what I love about that story is I had the same damn story. Success was you worked in the tall building in the suits, you drove the nice cars, you wore the nice jewelry, and that success was a symbol. It wasn't an emotions. And once you start embracing that success should rely more in your emotions than things, man, some clarity comes to the table. But once you discover you, man, life just gets a lot of fun. Life just gets a lot of fun. Julian, brother, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey with us. Here's how I like to finish out every show. And I do hang some people up with this question, so be forewarned.
All right, man.
If you were going to leave my audience with a phrase, a motto, a quote, a saying, maybe a mantra, something that they can carry with them on their journey, something that they can pull out of their toolbox, maybe when they're stacked up and going through it, what would be that phrase, quote, mantra, saying that you would say, pull this out and remember this?
I really would say know thyself. That's how big of this idea of self-awareness has changed my life, right? Be honest with yourself, right? And what's interesting is I did a values exercise too, and some of know what's important to you. And I think that's really it. And I don't want to overcomplicate it, but know thyself. Do the hard work of becoming self-aware.
Beautiful, brother. Man, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your energy. I appreciate your passion. I just appreciate you being you, brother. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Donnie. It's been a pleasure, man.
You know what, guys? Really, thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people, and from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped to over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, Get My Social Content Done